Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for the Metasploit Framework Black Hat Arsenal demonstration. In this demo, we're going to go over some of the latest and greatest features that were added earlier this year in Metasploit 6.3 that implement modern attack workflows for Active Directory targets. Now, first of all, a little bit about myself. My name is Spencer McIntyre. I go by @ZeroSteiner on all the various services online. I am the Metasploit Security Research Manager at Rapid7, and I have been a Metasploit contributor since 2010. So, we are here to talk about Metasploit and how it can be used for modern Active Directory attacks. Now, first of all, a lot of these capabilities we're going to talk about are related to LDAP enumeration. As we get into some of the more complicated ones, a lot of the information that we're going to be used can be accessed via LDAP enumeration. So we have a very nice LDAP query module that I'm going to demonstrate shortly. This new module supports multiple authentication mechanisms, which we will see, and it has a bunch of different built-in queries that are available through the actions. These are basically predefined queries that we think are useful for various attack scenarios and workflows. We're going to see a few of them throughout the course of the demonstration. You can list each of them using the show actions, and users can and are encouraged to even add their own saved queries through a data file that we'll go ahead and take a look at. In addition to the saved queries, custom queries can actually be issued through the module, and while those queries are being made, they can be exporting their information to a text-based table, CSV, or JSON formatting. So if you want to take the output and pipe it into another tool, it makes it pretty easy. So let's go ahead and take a look at this module. Now, to get started with this module, we're going to go ahead and use the new LDAP query module, and it requires some authentication information. So throughout this presentation, I'll try to call out the privilege levels of the various accounts that I'm using. First of all, I'm using a normal user account to go ahead and enumerate out some of this information. So we can see here I have set those data store settings. And then we are looking through the options, and we can see the auxiliary actions are all of the different queries that we can go ahead and make. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this first one. It looks like I forgot to set the domain, so we're going to go ahead and set the domain, and then we're going to enumerate out the accounts. And we can see that here where we have all of the account information enumerated out from Active Directory with the different LDAP queries. In addition to that, we have the enum domain is another example of a query, but we can go ahead and see this data file that ships with Metasploit, and we can go ahead and see what these query definitions actually look like. The data file is stored in YAML format, and it contains the name of the action, which you can see is mapped to what is referenced in the Metasploit framework. We have a short description, the actual LDAP filter, and then the attributes that we are interested in seeing from the object. So we can go ahead and run another action and take a look at the output from there. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the different output formats. So in this case, we're going to run the output format JSON, and we can see that our output has changed. The original default was text, and now we have it in a JSON output, and we can incorporate that into another tool. Next, let's go ahead and talk about Kerberos Authentication, which is one of the larger features that we have added in Metasploit 6.3. Our Kerberos Authentication supports multiple modules. We are primarily going to be looking at the LDAP query module, but we're only utilizing it as an example. We have Kerberos Authentication support for SMB, HTTP, MS SQL, WinRM, and LDAP modules. So if one of the modules that you are using utilizes one of those protocols and is using our libraries, it will have Kerberos Authentication built right in. The authentication works with utilizing plain text credentials, that would be a username and a password, to obtain a TGT or a ticket granting ticket, or a user can go ahead and utilize a ticket granting ticket or a ticket granting service from another tool or the integrated cache. So Metasploit will keep track of the tickets, as well as users can bring their own tickets from external tools. If you have one exported from like Mimikatz or one that you have been using with Impacket, you can incorporate that right into Metasploit. In addition to that, because Metasploit implemented the protocol stack itself utilizing Ruby, and we intend to use that for research in the future, but one of the nice side effects of that is that it fully supports the Metasploit pivoting capabilities that are supported by Meterpreter. Now let's check out a demo of this. So switching back over to the LDAP query module again, we're going to set the new LDAP authentication option. So the original was on auto, but we're going to set that over to Kerberos. And then because we're utilizing Kerberos authentication, we need to set another couple of additional data store options, including the LDAP R hostname and the domain controller R host. That way we can contact the KDC or the Key Distribution Center to perform our Kerberos authentication. Once that has been set up, we can run the module and we can see the tickets here have been saved to disk and we have successfully authenticated via Kerberos. When we run klist again, we can see that those tickets have been stored and we can see that we have access to those files outside of Metasploit as well. So we were able to go ahead and utilize Kerberos authentication with this LDAP module. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to copy this file out. We're going to delete all of our files using the integrated klist command that allows us to manage our Kerberos tickets. And we're going to imagine that we got that ticket from some external tool, perhaps Impacket or another tool that you have been using. And we're going to set the LDAP ::KRB5CC name option to the file that we have stored on disk. And we are able to load the credential from that ticket file and use it for our authentication purposes. Now that we've talked about how Kerberos authentication works within Metasploit modules, let's talk about the Kerberos specific modules that Metasploit has included. Metasploit has a couple of different modules for dealing with tickets. They are the Get Ticket module, which works against an online KDC, and it can be utilized to obtain a ticket granting ticket or a TGT, as well as a ticket granting service. In addition to that, it can perform PK init authentication and extract the NTLM hash, and we'll see an example of that later on when we talk about ADCS attacks. In addition to that, Metasploit also includes a module for forging both golden and silver tickets that can utilize information that has been extracted from a compromised host. And then lastly, Metasploit has a ticket converter module, which can be utilized to convert between the Kirby or the Windows formatted tickets and the MIT Ccache files. Internally, Metasploit primarily utilizes the MIT Ccache file format, but we have a module so that if you have a Kirby ticket, you can go ahead and utilize that within Metasploit. So next, a look at a demo of how a ticket can be forged. So we're going to go ahead and utilize the forged ticket module and see the options that we need to set. We're going to switch back to the LDAP query modules. That way we can obtain the domain SID before switching back to forged ticket. And we are going to set the domain to the value that we know, as well as the domain SID to the value that we had just extracted. Now we also need the AES key to be able to go ahead and forge our ticket. So we are going to go ahead and use the Windows secret stump module. Now this time we are authenticating with a domain admin. And to save ourselves from the extra output, we're going to run the grep command within Metasploit to only extract the KRB TGT AES keys. And we can see those are extracted from the target, and we're going to utilize this longer one, which is going to allow us to use AES 256 for our forged ticket. So once switching back to the forged ticket module, we will set the AES key again, and then finally we will set the user that we want to go ahead and forge the ticket for. In this case, it's going to be the administrator user. So we're going to take that ticket that was just saved. We're going to switch back over to the LDAP query module again. And this time we are going to specify the ticket that we had just utilized as the ticket that we want to be able to use to go ahead and authenticate against the domain controller. So we set the KRB5CC name option again to the ticket that we had just forged. It's important that we set the username to the administrator, which is the account within the ticket. And from there, we are able to go ahead and authenticate to the service again. So we can see we are authenticated to the target. Or actually, we need to go ahead and set the authentication back over to Kerberos. And once we have done that, yes, now we can see that we have the ticket was loaded from the one that we had forged, and we utilized that TGT to obtain a TGS, and that is cached, and we have successfully authenticated to our target. In addition to the modules that can actually authenticate to Kerberos and deal with Kerberos directly, we have a couple of modules that are helpful for diagnostic and research purposes. So they will go ahead and utilize the secrets that are extracted from the Windows secret stump again in many cases to be able to pull out that AES key and be able to decrypt information. But first up, we have the Kerberos key tab module, and that allows us to export the information that is stored in the Metasploit database. That would have been populated by the Windows secret stump file as our module, as we will see. And once that key tab file has been extracted, it can be utilized in programs such as Wireshark to be able to go ahead and decrypt the Kerberos traffic from the packet capture. In addition to that, we also have a module that can inspect tickets, and this will basically dump out the ticket information and all of its different fields so you can go ahead and take a look at what is contained in the file. Let's go ahead and take a look. First, we're going to switch over to the Kerberos key tab file, or excuse me, key tab module. We will show the options. So we have a couple of different options here and a couple of different actions that are supported. The first option that we're going to go ahead and set is going to be the key tab file that we want to go ahead and utilize. So we will set that to the key tab file, the location of where we want to export that. And you'll remember that we had all of this information was extracted when we ran the Windows secret stump module in the previous example. So we were able to dump all of that into our key tab. And now let's go ahead and switch over to the Kerberos inspect ticket module. So in this case, we're going to set our ticket to the golden ticket that we had just looked at. This is the ticket path that we want to go ahead and look at. And this time, we're not going to set the AES key just yet. So let's set that out to being blank, and we will run it. So we can see all the information that is not encrypted in the ticket. There's quite a bit of it here, but since we have the AES key from the Windows secret stump that we ran earlier, we're going to paste that in. When we run it again, we get quite a few additional fields. So we can see that that cipher block that was present before has now been decrypted, and we're able to extract out quite a bit of additional information. We can see the ticket's encryption type, all of the different flags, and we can utilize that information to go ahead and troubleshoot our issue or perform the research that we need. In addition to Kerberos, Metasploit has also added a set of modules to be able to go ahead and perform some of the Active Directory Certificate Services attacks that have become very popular in recent years. The ADCS attacks that we support are identified as ESC1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the ones that Metasploit currently has modules for. And we also have, in addition to that, modules to enumerate out certificate templates, as well as identify templates that are vulnerable to one of the ESC attacks that Metasploit supports. We also have modules that can go ahead and issue out the certificates, as well as create, read, update, and delete the individual templates in the target Active Directory environment on the LDAP server. Now, once a certificate has been issued, it can be used to authenticate in a couple of different ways. We can authenticate to LDAP utilizing S-channel, or we can also authenticate to Kerberos using the get ticket module. Now, the modules that support Kerberos don't directly support authenticating with a certificate, but you can utilize the Kerberos get ticket module that we saw previously to obtain a TGT or a TGS, and once that is stored in Metasploit's cache, it will be able to be used in all of the other different modules, the LDAP, SMB, WinRM, MS SQL modules. All of those will be able to utilize that cache file to be able to go ahead and authenticate. In addition to that, what we'll see an example of is actually obtaining the NTLM hash by authenticating to the target via pkinit. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the demo. So first of all, we're going to switch over to the LDAP query module one more time, and we're going to take a look at the first way that we can go ahead and enumerate out the Active Directory Certificate Services templates. That's utilizing the enum ADCS templates action, and we can see this ESC4 test, which, spoiler alert, is vulnerable to ESC4. We're going to switch over to a module that's a little bit more specific to the certificate templates now. This is going to be the ADCS cert template module, and we're going to set our hosts and our username and our password. Now, the username and the password that we're using in this case is just for a typical domain user account. So we can go ahead and see the actions that our module supports. And first of all, we're going to go ahead and we are going to read that certificate template. So we can see all the different fields that it has here. And we're going to switch over to the ICPR cert module, which is the iCertificate Passageway Request. That's what ICPR stands for. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to try to issue out the certificate. And we'll see here in this case, it fails to allow us to exploit ESC1. We were trying to issue a certificate for the S. McIntyre account. But because we know this is vulnerable to ESC4, we're going to go ahead and we're going to update this template using the provided template data. And once we have updated that, we can see that there was a backup that was written to it. And we can read it again, and now the properties of the certificate have changed. Now we're going to switch back over to the ICPR module, and without changing any of the options, we can see now we were able to successfully authenticate to the server and issue the certificate as the S. McIntyre user. Now the S. McIntyre user is a domain admin. So now that we have the certificate, we'll switch back over to the get ticket module. So we're using multiple modules here in this workflow. But now utilizing get ticket, we're going to set the rhost and we're going to set the cert file to the ticket that we had just utilized. Now we're going to set the username to the S. McIntyre user and the domain so that we have the information matches the ticket. And we're going to run get hash. And we can see that we obtained a TGT and then we obtained the NTLM hash for the domain admin. Now, because we are good net citizens, we are going to switch back over to the ADCS cert template module, and we are going to restore it. So we just need to scroll up here to find the data that we had previously written to disk. We are going to set the template file to that and perform an update on the template again. And if we read it, we can see that the certificate has been restored back to its original settings. So we were able to identify the templates. We were able to exploit ESC4 to make a template vulnerable to ESC1. Then we exploited ESC1 and we were able to escalate our privileges from a domain user to a domain admin. I have another workflow I'd like to demonstrate targeting role-based constrained delegation utilizing the RBCD module that uses LDAP to be able to go ahead and modify the security descriptor of a target computer account. What this allows us to do is compromise a target computer account given an account that we have access to that has the generic right permissions over that computer account. This workflow will involve a few different Metasploit modules, ultimately ending in a pass the ticket style attack to compromise it over ps-exec. So let's go ahead and dive right in. The first thing that we utilize is the SAMR computer module. Now this uses the normal domain account privileges to be able to go ahead and add a new computer account. So we're going to use that generic Active Directory user account again, being able to set up the authentication information. We're going to set the computer password only so that we don't have to memorize it later on. Otherwise, a random one will be generated for us. And we'll go ahead and add the computer. On success, we see the computer's name, and we're going to copy that because we'll need that later on. And we also have the security identifier, which is useful in some other scenarios. But we're going to move on to the RBCD module, and we're going to set our rhost to the domain controller again. It's going to be the LDAP server. Before we go ahead and set the necessary data store options, in this case, we're setting all of the authentication information. We are still authenticating as our domain user, and we're going to set delegate to as the WS01 account. Now, in this scenario, that is the computer that we have generic write privileges to. So we're able to read that, and then we are able to write to the security descriptor showing that we want to have delegate from the new computer account. Then we switch over to the Kerberos get ticket module, and we configure our authentication data store options one more time. Now this time we are going to use the get ticket module to obtain a ticket granting service. And so we need to specify the SPN. In this case, we want to be able to authenticate to CIFS on the target system, which is again that WS01 account. And we want to impersonate that S. McIntyre account again. That's going to be that domain admin. Once we're all set, we need to run get TGS. We need to set our domain. And then when everything is set up correctly, we can obtain the TGS ticket, and that is this file. And we'll go ahead and copy this because now we're going to use this in a pass the ticket style attack using the ps-exec module. So we switch over to ps-exec before once again setting our data store options. And so this time we'll be using psexec to target the WS01 computer. We set our username to smcintyre because that's who we are going to authenticate as, and we set all of our Kerberos related data store options. The last option is going to be the KRB5CC name, which is going to be that ticket that we had just created. You need to also set the R host to the workstation name. And it looks like we forgot the domain. So we need to go ahead and set the domain, and once everything is set correctly, we can run the module. And we are able to authenticate as an administrator because, of course, psexec requires administrative privileges. And we can see that we have compromised that target Windows 10 system because we had generic right over the object in Active Directory. Now with that, I want to say thank you very much. The Metasploit framework is available at https://metasploit.com. In addition to that, it can be downloaded from GitHub at github.com/rapid7/metasploit-framework. We also have quite a bit of documentation available at docs.metasploit.com, and we have a 6.3 release blog, which covers quite a bit of the information that I had just gone over. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm available on social media as well as the Metasploit Slack channel. And I hope you enjoyed this demonstration, and thank you very much.